I have been lying to you, and it is time for me to admit the truth. I've written 5 extra novels in the last 2 years.
We introduce for the first time ever in...
I am so sorry to my world. This is not what we want.
Normally, when someone achieves something great, the decent thing to do is to congratulate them. Not just because you appreciate the actual current event, but because you know all of the work, challenge, and hardship that went into it beforehand, which went completely and utterly unnoticed. But because they stuck through that and worked through the hard times, now they have achieved greatness. And while many people may feel jealous in that situation, they would also have a sense of shame and realize that actually that was an internal problem on them and they should probably look into why they feel that and improve themselves, rather than actually taking that out on the person who's made something of themselves. However, this is the current year, and in the current year, we have Twitter, a place where people go to preach their jealousy, to pin it up as a system of virtue, where all the other bitter people from around the world come together to upvote them in their bitterness and share just how jealous they really are that someone else is making a success of themselves. And of course, it can't be that the person's put more time, effort, or talent in than they have. Oh no, it can't be their fault. That's why they have to go and preach and harvest the upvotes to make themselves feel better about themselves. But they don't just get upvotes. They also get this video. Because, courtesy of Bounding Into Comics, we get this article. Brandon Sanderson's Kickstarter success draws outrage and accusations of privilege from fellow writers. The multi-million-dollar veteran sci-fi and fantasy author Brandon Sanderson recently did a mystery novel Kickstarter, and it's drawn outrage, some even contributing the campaign success to nothing more than his own privilege. Yes, this is a guy who actually wrote 4 extra books over 2 years on top of his already scheduled works, put all that time and effort in, built up a fan base over years to the point where he can release 4 books and pre-sell them to people who have no idea what those books even are. They don't even have a title for them, and they're willing to give up their hard-earned money. Do you think that they did that because they'd actually built up trust and an appreciation for his work, a respect over those years because he put the time and the effort in? Or is it simply because he was born in the same nation as them? However, while the majority of people celebrated the resounding success, some people found the entire affair to be nothing more than an insult. Because on Twitter, there are a number of people who seem to think that the Earth rotates around their anus. But the worst part was who these people were. Because these are people that should understand the difficulty, the challenge to actually become a successful author. Because they're authors themselves. They should understand what it's like to send book after book after book to publisher after publisher and have it turned down. But we no longer live in a world where that's the only path to success, and Brandon Sanderson has even shown them that himself, building up a YouTube channel with 342,000 subscribers. He has a Twitter with 301,000 followers. An Instagram with 147,000 followers. He's even got a Twitch with 2,500 followers on, and he barely even streams. Honestly, I don't know who could possibly do a thing like that. And it might be that someone that's savvy enough to do that, to build up a social presence, get their audience known, get them to trust them, and then use that presence to sell them future books, that could be a good business model. It might even be a business model that's been successful in industry after industry that he's just replicating. Or it could just be that one of his ancestors was born in the right nation, and his audience invests tens of hours into his works simply because biologically he has the preferred amount of chemical in his skin that they want. Yeah, that sounds likely, doesn't it? That sounds really likely. And you could respond to this in the correct manner, which allows you to preserve your own dignity and congratulate the man, or you could do it in the selfish, jealous manner and go, today is a really good day to support your favorite author who hasn't made $18 million in the last few days. I mean, look, if we're going to actually talk about people who haven't made $18 million in the last few days, I'm one of them, and so probably 99.99999 are the people that bought the books in the first place. It's actually a really small list, but apparently it's a massive issue for these people. Am I personally upset at Brandon Sanderson for making money? No, not at all. Truly good for him. I mean, if it's good for him, I don't know why you made this post. It's almost like you're trying to cover yourself after you made the first one and realized that was a mistake. But as ever on Twitter, there's always another worst take waiting for you around the corner, and that's how you end up with this one. This runaway Brandon Sanderson Kickstarter is totes. That's the first and last time I'm ever going to use that word. The origin story for the Brandon Sanderson Presents imprint, where he shines a spotlight on a name we've made to collectivize people who we think we can use as a weapon against others, writing epic fantasy steeped in their own cultures, right? This was the plan the whole time, wasn't it? And to which the only reply screaming from the void can only be, why? No, seriously, why? This is a man who spent his life reaching a certain goal, making a certain audience, acquiring people who respect and trust him and who appreciate his work and his talent, and you're like, okay, so you did all of that simply so you can give it to people who have never earned it. Because what I would say is, if these people's work is so good, it should be able to shine on its own. It shouldn't need somebody else to come along and go, I will be your savior and uplift you out of the mud and the filth, and now you too can be as successful. Or that's not how that works. That's never been how that works. Perfect example of this is actually the multiple TV series that we've got, with the Rings of Power, which we can't talk about so much because it's actually not out yet, but the Wheel of Time. That was a work of Rafe Judkins, which was awful, even though he had the best start. This was a guy who had somebody else's reputation to uplift his production, his TV series, so that everybody knew about it, everyone had heard about it, and it was trash, so nobody watched it. Yeah, it's almost like it doesn't work. And then you compare that to something like Squid Game, which nobody knew about, and yet it was just put onto Netflix, and word of mouth alone spread it across everybody, and it became what was probably the biggest series of last year. That didn't need anyone to push it, because every single person that watched it became their own little marketing executive and told all their friends about it. This is how it works. And so for any of the other authors out there, I would say, have you tried making your own YouTube channel, getting your own Twitter? What about an Instagram or a Twitch? Have you got any of these? Are these things that you actually have? Because if you haven't, then you're not putting in as much work as he did to get where he is today. And that could be why he's more successful. Then we have Alex Brown, they, them, who writes for Tor.com and is an NPR book critic, who says, getting increasingly more irritated by the continued astronomical success of that Kickstarter. I read a bunch of his books years ago, mostly enjoyed them too, and this sentence is very important, because then we move on to, the more I read, the more bored I got. So this is someone that mostly enjoyed his books, but also gets extremely bored during them. I mean, personally, that sounds like an individual problem. That sounds like someone with an incredibly short attention span who just can't pay attention through a thick novel. I don't know, maybe the Penguin books are more your speed. It's the way it seems to me, right? Because you were having a great time in them, you just got bored halfway through, even though you admit that you enjoyed them. At every turn, he picks the most obvious choice. Mistborn. Go on, tell me you predicted Mistborn. Tell me you really worked out how Mistborn was going to go through the entire way through the books at multiple points. Right. And his characters are so stock you could order them out of a catalogue. I mean, remember, this is a guy who apparently makes every obvious choice in all of his books, and his characters are so stock you could order them out of a catalogue. To which I have to say, if it's that easy, if everything he's doing is so stock and rote and boring, how come no one else can mimic his success? Because you know who else who does stock, rote, boring characters, the same ones over and over again? People like Rafe Judkins with The Wheel of Time, Hollywood in all of their reproductions. I mean, we do have people that do the same characters in everything, and you know what? All of their stuff sucks, it's all boring, and it all dies. So, I don't know. It seems to be that the successful work actually isn't like that. What you mean when you say, oh, they're just so stock and you could order them out of a catalogue, is these aren't the ones that you order out of a catalogue. And therefore, you're just annoyed because they don't fit into your work. If he said, well, okay, can you give me an example of something that isn't stock? You would give him one of your stock characters that we see being forced into every single piece of work. And it's largely because he lacks the creativity. that comes with having a broad, diverse worldview. And by broad and diverse, obviously she means the very narrow pinprick of life, which only actually includes a certain very specific number of things, which actually excludes 99.999% of everything. It actually just seems to me like your broad worldview is actually small and tiny and insignificant. Because with each book, I walked away feeling like if only these characters had been bumping uglies with people who had the same uglies. Oh, now we've found it. The true meaning of life. The most important thing that could possibly make anyone not stock and boring is obviously if they smack their bits into people who also have those bits. If only his colonial setting had been interrogated more. And as anyone may know from the background, I'm English. The people who had the largest empire in all of human history. Go on, interrogate it, go on. If that trope had been subverted, what trope? That humans actually have challenge and difficulty and conflict? Something which actually provides opportunity for a story to be expanded and characters to develop over time? You mean that trope? What do you want them to do? Sit in a room and do needlepoint for 30 hours? Yeah, I'm sure your books would be really entertaining, love. Just imagine one of her novels where everyone's just banging dangly bits into people with other dangly bits, and we're all just talking about how no one can have any conflict or challenge, and we must all sit in a room being nice to each other. That really sounds like a laugh-a-minute entertainment. And also, while I'm here, for someone that's apparently read and enjoyed most of his works, there is the Stormlight Archive, his biggest epic piece, which just happens to have this in it. It actually has in it exactly what you're after. And it's never enough, is it? It's never enough. Or that, or you actually didn't know this, haven't read the stuff, and have no idea what you're talking about. And if anyone's wondering why I left that as a clapback till the end, it's because actually that being in the books is the most insignificant part of the entire story, because it doesn't matter. Whether it was in or not is completely irrelevant, because it's his artwork, it's his production, it's his choice what's in it or not, it's his vision. You don't have to put stuff like that in to defend it, because there's other arguments which are far more important and carry far more weight than just being, well, it's in there anyway. I just think it's funny to add in at the end to show, I don't know, maybe a lack of even basic research. And then, of course, just because we've sunk so low anyway, we might as well continue to go through and get right down into the dirt and the filth when she starts insulting his religious beliefs. Now, I didn't know this, but also, I don't know why it matters. This is his own personal beliefs, and I don't know what on earth it's got to do with anybody else at all. I don't even look into the authors that I really like. Night Angel trilogy is one of my favorite trilogies. I have no idea anything about that author at all. I just know I like the books. But I'm not going to let him skate by on his religious beliefs either, and honestly, I'm not really sure what you expect you can do about it, love. Nobody asked you, and nobody cares. It turns out that actually, you have no power here. When you come out with stuff like this, instead, it just comes across as you attacking somebody for absolutely no reason about topics which have no relevance to the thing. It seems almost like you've got a massive chip on your shoulder and people start to wonder why. What is it about you, individually, that makes you care so much about this that you'll try and dig up anything that you think you can use against him, even when it has no relation to the topic at all? Because you come out with statements like this, with no grounding in reality. I've not seen anything of him about this at all. In fact, if anything I would say about Brandon Sanderson, he seems to be too nice. Because I don't think he would pull you up over comments like this. I don't think he'd even appreciate me making this kind of video. I'm also not that nice. But of course, not the only author which has done this. Noted sci-fi author Joel Scalzi similarly chalked up Sanderson's success to his existence with various different chemical levels determined by his DNA, following a lengthy blog post in which he congratulated his peer and discussed numerous topics related to the Kickstarter, with the declaration that, before anyone else mentions it, yes, Brandon Sanderson has operated on the lowest difficulty setting in life here in the US, and it's entirely possible that some opportunities were open to him because of his DNA that weren't open to others. Absolutely astonishing. This comment has made some of the usual suspects very salty, and to which I would say that I assume by usual suspects you mean people with an intellect higher than that of room temperature. Anyone with critical thinking. Anyone who's, I don't know, not incredibly bitter that they're not doing as well as other people. Because I tell you what, there's a load of other male authors who also have the same chemical levels determined by their DNA, and they're not all breaking Kickstarter records. It's almost as if there's something special, something specific, something that Brandon Sanderson has done or has created, which other people haven't. It's almost like he's put more work in, has got more talent. And yes, I agree that success in life is determined by hard work, talent, and luck. But the thing about hard work and talent is, the more you've got, the luckier you get. And it's simply because you actually expand your opportunities to get lucky. So if you imagine that someone wrote the best book in the world, and yet they only put it in one bookstore, it could be that someone actually came across who worked for a massive publishing firm, and they found that one book and thought, this is amazing, I need to get this everywhere and distribute it around the world. That would be very lucky. But if that person did more work, if they actually put in more time and effort to spread around themselves, and then maybe they get into bookstores across a nation, well, now it's far more likely that that same book executive will stumble across that book. They get luckier because of the time and the work and the effort that they've put in to get themselves into more places. The better you are, the luckier you get, because you narrow that gap that it takes to hit that lucky moment, and so you hit more of them over time. But of course, we could actually not understand this. We could somehow function throughout all of life without even once considering anything which requires even a modicum of intellect to actually understand. And we can just instead say things like, my frothy little dudes, being somebody with a certain level of a chemical in your body gives you a leg up. I mean, you don't even have an argument here, you just have an assertion, but don't worry, because I'm sure none of your friends in your own tiny little world will ever actually bring that up to you, or ask you to explain anything or provide any evidence or anything else for it, no. Instead, no, you can safely stay in your own little worlds, never once questioned about anything you believe, and be the biggest bigot you can possibly be. But for the rest of us frothy little dudes that realize there is more to life than this tiny little fraction where you only care about one single chemical being present within the human experience, might actually realize that no, there's probably one of the many other reasons that could possibly exist in the world. And that might be what allows them to make so much better work than you. But let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Like the video if you like the video, and subscribe. More videos like this in the future. But for now, that's it from me. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.